the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, and our Mother, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Fireside with Fathers. We're fighting off the technical drones and everybody who's out there trying to shut us down. No. It always starts off Fireside with Fathers with some hiccups, and we're obviously counting on all you guys who are following us and loving what we're doing to keep us in the prayers, especially on Monday nights, because it just seems like there's always something. So thanks be to God. We've got Fr Brendan Kilcoyne again with us. He's been very consistent in his yes. He's been giving us his yes, and he's been coming on. He's got a different setup tonight, which is great. You can actually find him. I found him back on Immaculata Productions. If you look on that YouTube channel, he's got a different setup, but it's there. It works. It's all about content, you know. Even if you're doing it in a garage or if you're doing it, well, he said he was going to be doing it from the doghouse, but he's still in his sitting room in his living room. So that's great to have Fr Brendan back on. Tonight we're going to be talking about modern Ireland and what does it mean to be evangelizing, to be working on the ground in modern Ireland and everything that implies. So, Fr Brendan, like I said, once again, thank you so much. You guys support the work, support Fr Brendan, get this video out there, share it with your friends, put it into your WhatsApp, whatnot, and take advantage of technology while you can to spread the word. You know, you do a share and you're sharing in the gospel, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring truth and light and life to people. So, Fr Brendan, thank you for saying yes again and coming on and being with us tonight.
Not at all, Father Luke. Always a pleasure.
So where do we start, Fr Brendan? I mean, like I said, modern Ireland, evangelizing. How do you do this, or how do you even see this? What's the deal here?
Well, just in terms perhaps of my own recent experience, but also my own musings on this even before that, the scene in Ireland really is quite frail. It's quite small. The Irish Catholic scene at this stage, much smaller than it was, and set to be smaller. Catholics are scattered really, or will be scattered all over the country. I mean, let's put it this way: even the future of the parish system as it exists has to be queried. You know, because you're going to have you're not going to have critical mass in any one place, or certainly you won't in many. And by critical mass, I mean enough people to keep a sizable church going, to keep a parish structure going, and all the rest of it. But the question comes up as well as to what shape evangelization is going to take. And I just want to throw it out there. I may be totally wrong about this. Perhaps you think I'm being whimsical. But when you asked me to think about a topic, I suggested the evangelist as Lone Ranger. You know, so I'm sort of, and to just mix that a bit, I'm thinking of a spaghetti western approach here. Okay, I'm thinking of the evangelist as the guy who comes in off the desert with the poncho and the hat and the 5 o'clock shadow and the match in his mouth. Okay, the man with no name, or the woman with no name. And I suppose what I was trying to say is that I just have a sense in this modern Irish situation is that you will have, and for a long time already have had in the Protestant tradition, certainly the American Protestant tradition, you will have traveling Lone Ranger evangelists with all the strengths and all the dangers associated with that. I'm thinking particularly of Robert Duvall, his film there 20 years ago, The Apostle. Do you remember that one?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, well worth seeing. Yeah. Very powerful film about a gifted and faith-filled, godly Baptist preacher who at the same time is frail and sinful and makes an absolute mess out of a very successful ministry, not for the first time, and starts rebuilding one again while on the run from the law. It's really quite something. Yeah, it's worth seeing. Now, I'm not suggesting in any way that we produce people who are going to be on the run from the law all the time. But I am suggesting they may be not so much on the run as on the road. because you may find that we go back in that sense again to the early church. How will I put this? You may find we start getting unintentionally Pauline in our approach here. Is that you'll find evangelists basically traipsing around the churches, so to speak, communities here and there of Catholics. And they're already doing this, being asked to speak or just showing up and speaking or just showing up at Catholic events. And this is where I've said this before, Catholic events are going to be crucial, because not only can Catholics get together at them, scattered as they will be, but also these lone rangers can show up at them, upskill, meet people, and the church can make sure that these people don't spin off into unregulated space, as it were. Start to go completely. How would you put it? Bush. Yeah, right out there. So I would suggest to you that what we need is some form of an institute of some kind for training and upskilling evangelists, whether they're parents, whether they're teachers, and so on, for functioning in this culture. And particularly I don't know, I think it might be dramatic to talk about persecution, but I do think the church is certainly distinctly out of fashion and unlikely to come back into fashion anytime soon, although we may acquire a certain niche, chic kind of attraction. But at the moment, we don't even have that. And I think evangelists, particularly given the whole wokery stuff, are going to have to be very quick on their feet, very astute. Now, you're already doing that, and you've talked about it. And I think you've evangelists out there who may perhaps be giving talks or whatever, and they're going to have to be upskilled in all of that, because as you once memorably said, in these things, you crack a twig and you're done. You make one mistake and that could be the end of it in a school, and evangelists have to know that. Now, I would suggest that even people who are trying to upskill on their own should be looking at the traditional training of rhetoric. And I think that's what we should be going back to. But we were talking before this began, and as we were saying, this whole scene is becoming so complicated. And for instance, the whole question of technology is moving with such terrifying speed that it's difficult to know, to make plans for the long term or even the medium term future. Artificial intelligence, for example, apparently is you wouldn't say steaming ahead. It's too young a thing to be doing that. It's kind of banging off things and stumbling ahead, but it's doing it more and more quickly, and it's beginning to move more and more decisively. So we need to take all that into account, because we need to remember that not only are our evangelists going to be speaking for God to human beings, we're going to be in a situation where even humanism is threatened. And remember that humanism is our unacknowledged child. We need to remember that, as is liberal politics, as is liberal democracy, as indeed, at several removes, of communism and socialism, and all of these attempts, some of them utterly disastrous, to try to make heaven on earth. And in a strange way, although many of these ideologies have persecuted us, many of them will be superior to what may be coming, which will be a kind of transhumanism, a situation in which the human being is devalued. These are amazing times. They're very, very exciting. They're very dangerous times. Now,
what would
to
be an example this is something that I've been actually having on the back of my head. I want to kind of inform myself more on. I watched a documentary going back almost a year now, so it's probably out of date, the AI dilemma. But what is this, like, what's going on with AI? Like, what do you mean, like, as far as it's getting more and more
Well,
strength.
I'd refer you back to an article we were discussing beforehand that I had just come across today in the digital edition of The Spectator. Now, there's an American Spectator as well. This is the English Spectator, which is a very old political magazine, which I highly recommend, by the way. I've been reading it for years, came to it through a friend originally. And there's an article there by a journalist called Sean Thomas, I think dated today, and it's on artificial intelligence. And it talks about two major developments lately, two absolutely major developments lately in artificial intelligence, which are so significant that a prominent Hollywood mogul has actually cancelled plans for an 800 million investment in studio building and equipment, because he says that the second and most advanced of these programs, called Soros, which is produced by OpenAI, seems to have thrown the cat radically among the pigeons. And in fact, this can actually produce a video on command. And they haven't been able to do that up to this point, which is to produce a coherent video on command. In other words, to produce video material from words. This is very significant. I mean, the implications for the entertainment industry are obvious. So evangelists now are going to be sticking up for humanity. It has now, in a sense, we always were, okay, because you were sticking up for God. To stick up for God is to stick up for humanity, because He's our Creator and our only hope. But now it's going to be very, very obvious that a humanity without God can't seem to protect itself from its own creations. So this highly developed, high-tech Frankenstein that we've created, which we cannot disown. It's our creature, and to a sense, even our unacknowledged child. We cannot disown this. And it is, in a sense, human. In a sense, in that it is the product of the human imagination and human craft.
Well, in a lot of cases, it's better than human in the sense of, I know I've read of Sports Illustrated, which would be a very prominent sports magazine going in the States. It was classic. They're no longer a thing because it's just not to write. It's just not a thing anymore. And I know a lot of writers that have been laid off because you can get a bot to do an article, really just giving him a couple of snippets of information. And in no time, I'm saying better than human in that sense of if it's production. But I don't know. I'm kind of thinking, listening to this, we're going to be losing even just human, art as an example. I read an article there. I think his name's Ted Gioia. It was resent to me. I'm not too familiar with him, but he just wrote an article, really. He's an artist. And he said it's like the food chain. And art has always been under, as a little fish, it's always been under the big fish of entertainment. Because entertainment is, I just have to kind of appeal to the likes of the crowd and kind of just keep them going. Whereas art kind of puts demands on the crowd, and they're trying to make them think or enter into a mystery. Or, art's different. It takes time, for contemplation or reflection. So entertainment was always eating the little art fish. And now he says it's not even entertainment anymore, as you said. I think he mentioned, I think it was Sony who bought Michael Jackson's legacy for over $2 billion, because they're already seeing that that's the way they're going to be continuing to make money, because people are always going to be going after Michael Jackson. He's kind of just going to always be there. Whereas new producers, they're not going to do it. I think artists make more money dead than alive. I think he mentioned as well, singing artists. Columbia, Paramount, Universal, they've been laying people off. They're just seeing that this entertainment fish is going to be eaten by what he calls distraction. Well, that's the new thing now. It's just to keep people engaged, however you have to. Well, and then the last one was addiction.
Yeah. Oh, addiction. Okay.
Addiction's the last one he has there on the food chain, which is that's what it's all about. It's to keep him into this vicious cycle of.
So there are tobacco comparisons, as it were.
It could be, yeah. He mentioned the word anedonia, I think it is, which is I think it has something to do with, the root would be heathenism, pleasure, where they're not even getting pleasure anymore, but they have to keep engaging just to not be in a state of non-dopamine, he says. It's just,
Hmm.
and there's a book recently written called Dopamine Nation, which just talks about our culture. It's just, they're fiends, and it's really just going after dopamine hits. So yeah, it's just going back to, art in just being a human. Like if, I think that's part of the panorama we're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, increasingly in the light of the brilliance of our own creations, we're going to have to repeatedly rehearse what is human and defend what is human, without at the same time simply declining into some primitive Luddism. So it's wow, it's really challenging. And I mean, artificial intelligence, for example, can produce an excellent sermon, apparently. And why not? Because it has access to, for instance, the entire works of Aquinas, the works of Bonaventure. It has access to whatever it wants, right up to Ratzinger, Ranner, von Balthasar. All of those are
All
on
the fathers of the
available.
church. We're gonna get,
All of them, all the fathers of the church. A lifetime of study wouldn't manage to go through all of that yet. Artificial intelligence can probably do it, no problem.
the priest
And
GPT, they're going to be taking out they're going to be having versions of ChatGPT for priests on the.
there you go.
It's in the elections. I heard that 2024 are going to be the last elections because in 2028 AI is going to know the best candidate because they have access to everything. So it's just
Yeah.
a matter of AI now, kind of like calling the shots there, which is crazy. And I'm just thinking, as talk about sermons, you're going to get to a point where you're going to be getting filtered or anything. Even me speaking now, there's key words
Yes.
that are going to be flagged. The new hate
That's
speech
right.
thing that's coming in, it's they
Yeah.
pick it up, they flag it, and then it's just reported. And you're just not. I mean, I don't think, as far as being a good citizen in this AI world, which the AI knows better than we do,
Yeah.
I don't think I
Yeah.
would last very long, to tell you the truth. I don't know.
No, fair enough. I saw a video lately on YouTube where they were referring to the A word and the B word. A word being abortion and B word being something else. And this was how they were managing it during the video because they didn't want to, get chopped.
Yeah.
So there you go. It's very interesting because, as I said, we cannot simply disown artificial intelligence. It's the product of human ingenuity. And in a sense, it's the product of our attempt to get to heaven. It's the product of our attempt to imitate, constant attempts to imitate God, with all of the beauty and all of the tremendous danger that is attached to that. And history shows both. So goodness knows where we are there. But I suppose certainly what we can say will last. Definitely, I believe, will be the essentiality of human contact, and I see that being enduringly attractive. The more AI develops, I think people will, in the same way as people now with money want their suits handmade in London, even though they can get a beautiful suit off the rack and walk out of the door of a gentleman's outfitters in a beautiful suit. At the same time, they spend vastly more money having their suits handmade. And I think the human will not disappear, but the implications of this are staggering. For instance, we may be on the verge of universal social credit simply because so many people now will be put out of work. We may be on the verge of having to go to a society that's far more organized again, where you have universal minimum income, all of this stuff, simply because human beings will have less and less to do in industrial terms. So what are we on the verge of? An age of which has been predicted of leisure, of cultivated leisure? I don't know. But I do know that there are huge dangers here. I know you're familiar with these great dystopian novels, 1984 and Brave New World. And if you remember, and this is connected with what you were talking about, in 1984, Orwell has a machine called a versificator. The party uses versificators to produce cheap, sentimental songs for the proles. And he even has a few verses, or at least one verse of such a song. There's a prole woman pinning up washing on a line, and she's singing this song, which begins, "It was only an April fancy." I think that's the first line, and it doesn't sound half bad. Just a silly, sentimental folk song. And so artificial intelligence now may well be producing art, producing music, producing rock music, and all of this. And where will that leave us? And I think it'll bring us to the second dystopian novel, it was actually the first to be written, which some say was a much more astute prediction, Brave New World with
Huxley. I think
Huxley.
what we're living now would be, you could say that, yeah.
Yeah, where you have not alone, this kind of universal care, but you also have the drug soma being made available to everyone, and being encouraged. And we tend to remember such things have already partly happened. In the Second World War, some would say that large sections of the German army functioned on a drug called Pervitin, which I think was a version of crystal meth, which was issued to the troops practically on demand, and kept them awake longer and kept them sharp longer, and all the rest of it. Some would say that drugs were widely used in Vietnam by soldiers, and in fact that's reported.
Yeah.
And that's an instance in war. Now you have drugs widely available in society, not in extreme situations, but in society.
Well, I was thinking, I was making the connection with the soma is the drug of, the dopamine, because they're even comparing it to drugs, what a lad gets when he gets his hit on Instagram, and how they have us extremely hooked. I mean, there's neuroscientists that are working in these companies, and it's really all the studies is how to keep them engaged and hooked. And for me, it's like, I think Huxley also wrote an essay on pleasure when he was saying that it's when man is just like pursuing pleasure, it's like the first signs of the downfall of society, because it's like I mean, it's obvious but I mean, you're talking about the suit. I'm trying to think, Father Brendan, because see, I can't generalize either. I'm really just in a small area of secondary school kind of level. Please God, we'll be going to university level at some point as well. But these boys, I'm just trying to keep this idea of going to London to get a suit. Like, is this generation now that we're working with that would have been born with the technology? So they're born into smartphones, really, a lot of them. And they're just, you look at their screen time, and then you're averaging 2023 was 7 hours a day. So, I mean, if you're 7 hours sleeping, which they say they are, I don't believe it, 7 hours in school, that's 21 hours of your day if the 7 hours are on the screen. So I'm trying to think about how this is working. Would a lad like that be thinking about going to London to get a suit? Would he be thinking about going out on a date with a girl in a restaurant face to face? Because Instagram, his status is his followers and how few people he's following. So he's the lad because he doesn't have to follow people, and a lot of people are following him. And when you see another lad who would have less, he's completely like a less of a lad, or if you have this girl that's maybe looking at your pictures, it's just the whole universe in there. I'm trying to think of the suit, like at what point is he going to be kind of getting inspired to get, some aspiration to get a suit made in London, tailor-made? I'm not sure. Kind of just putting an objection.
I think what we're coming to here, and it's not at all impossible, I think to an extent it happened in France quite a long time ago, and it may well be happening here. It's most undesirable, but it may well be happening, is that Catholicism will become a middle class and an upper middle class niche at that. It will any philosophy or theology that resolutely and defiantly upholds the human will become niche, not mainstream, and it will probably appeal more to the educated. I don't know how to say that without
That's interesting.
sounding
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, that's interesting.
without sounding arrogant and class thing. I would like to point out that my own origins are quite modest socially, so I'm not.
Same.
I'm not advocating this as some sort of I'm not some sort of a desirable thing. I'm just saying it may be happening already, and it may well happen. Catholicism may become a bastion of those who wish and can afford to and have the educated tastes for the option of humanity.
Yeah.
Of a fully human life, of people who grow their own food. Do you know the way I'm thinking here?
Yeah.
People who grow their own food, people who are suspicious to some extent of government authority. I don't mean, complete militia, redneck rebels. But what maybe that too, I don't know. But I mean people who how would you put it? I mean, do you remember in 1984 how wine and things like that were the preserve of the inner party?
Yeah.
I think thinking like this and feeling one's humanity fully may become the preserve of the inner party. And by inner party I mean the upper middle and upper classes. Yeah.
Well, there's something that I think that's important just for people who are listening that can kind of get into this idea that it's AI is going to take over as like we're going to lose humanity. I mean, the human heart will always be our ally because we know what it's created for, and like you said, it's the Dionysius rising. So like you're only so far woke and so far into the Bacchus and just revelry and pleasure, free range everything. It's just everything is open, like the society we're living right now. That's just there's no doubt about that. People start to crave a bit humanity, or even truth, or logic, reason, direction. That's what I hold on to. Like there's something in the heart that it reacts to that because it's divine. It's the divinity in us, the image of God.
But we have to become aware now that the world, and specifically AI, is going to become better and better at buying that off, at providing consolations, as it were, at providing oases in the desert, at providing, a kind of any number of apple greens, so to speak, off the motorway, where you can be consoled from, at your consoled concerning your actual irrelevance and pointlessness in social and political terms. But you can be made feel important. You can be given the means to feel important. Isn't that why it's so dull to sit beside a drunk at a wedding? It's because he thinks he's hilarious. These drugs, they'll become better and better, and they will make you feel clever and relevant and loved and important and give you a sense of well-being, and ward off life-giving depression. I know that sounds a very strange phrase, but actually pain in this is valuable. Do you remember at the end of Ridley Scott's iconic film from the early 80s? You weren't even born in the early 80s.
86.
I'm talking to children, for God's sake. Yeah, anyway. But that film hasn't dated. Do you remember in that film where the cyborg, played by Rutger Hauer, is dying? It's a built-in obsolescence. He doesn't want to die, but he's designed to die after so many years. And even his designer can't reverse the genetic input that has been made to make sure that he dies. And he, in the end, in order to stay awake, he's stabbing himself with things. just to stimulate the nerves. He takes a piece of glass, I think it is, a huge shard of glass, and sticks it right through his hand to keep himself awake, because he can feel his body starting to shut down. And in a sense, I'm not suggesting that we mutilate ourselves, but in a sense, we're going to have to realize that the hardships of life will actually keep us human, keep us awake, because increasingly we will be narcotized. We're becoming brilliant at palliative care in this culture. And increasingly we will become fantastic, again with the help of artificial intelligence, in dulling the pain of existing, in dulling the angst, and in making people stop worrying and stop feeling. It is a ghastly prospect, because it's an ersatz. It's a completely inauthentic, how would you put it, consolation, because it answers nothing, and it provides nothing of value for the future, but it will give you an ongoing satisfaction to your yearning for a future. It will give you a sense of a future that in fact doesn't exist. So, I mean, I'm really I'm conscious I'm just bouncing balls here and coming up with no answers. But if we're talking about the evangelist as Lone Ranger, I'm thinking again, do you remember one of Mel's early films? Do you remember? Actually, you don't remember. Just babies.
The movie references I'd be getting off of your podcast, actually, to tell you the truth, your movie reviews. So, it's like...
Oh, I remember back in the 70s being awestruck at... do you remember that dystopian one, the post-apocalyptic one? There were 2 or 3 of them in Mel Gibson. He was very young then. There was his early... Mad Max.
Okay.
Have you seen them?
I haven't. No, I know Mad Max, though, but I haven't seen them.
Well, somebody reminded me of this lately, is where Mad Max, in one of them, he's sitting waiting out in the desert for one of his plans to come to fruition, and he decides to have a bite to eat. Now, this is a post-nuclear war scenario in Australia, and he digs out of his pack a tin of dog food, opens it with a penknife, and starts to eat it with evident enjoyment, watched enviously by somebody else who's sitting beside him. And I mean, this is where we're going to be in cultural terms. And I would strongly recommend to those who are interested in evangelization, okay? Now, look, I know, all right, you may think I'm going too far here. I would strongly, don't wait for organizations. Don't even try to start organizations because they're easy targets, okay? They're too easy, they're too big as a target. Upskill yourself and have a means of staying in close, informal contact with other evangelizers and with the bishop, your local bishop. Okay? But it's going to be life on the road. Evangelists are going to have to be very well educated. They're going to have to be very resilient if they're going to stand up for the humanity that God created before the monsters that humanity has in turn created. So we're back to Mad Max. We're back to Clint out in the desert in the spaghetti westerns. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, in a sense.
I know.
I'm not sorry, because these are the times where we're living, and it's an impertinence to apologize for them. This is the hand we've been dealt. And it's an insult to God almost to throw it back in his face. He wants us to work in this context.
Well, excitingly enough, it is, and it's also, if you just have to open up the Bible anywhere, and whenever things, to you, humanly speaking, are just so impossible, the exciting element is that the Holy Spirit is also excited to overthrow something with a weak, miserable loner, or he's even just like... It's all over the place. Like it's basically his trademark and his style. But going back to what you're saying, I mean, I'm also going to ask the question here is as you mentioned, rhetoric, logic. Are people able to have normal conversations? Is what I'm going to be getting at. See, if AIs come up, all right, we have AIs there. These boys are brilliant. The ones who are behind all this. But like the mob out here that we're evangelizing, I've heard that the lads aren't able to read 2 paragraphs straight now without getting distracted. We have a friend who's teaching engineering here in UCC, and he says he was learning this stuff in secondary school. Well, he's teaching at a college level. And it's almost like we're losing a lot of we're talking about humanity, or even just on a general level, a lot of this is kind of going down a couple of notches as far as just human, like I said, conversation or logic, arguments. You know, you say an argument and they don't, a lot of them would just be kind of, you mentioned it with John Waters in your interview, how he said it's no longer about truth. Like truth isn't based on evidence or facts. It's based on what people have opinionated and come together as a common agreement. And that's the truth. I mean, I'm just having a conversation with a guy the other day, and he had cancer, he recovered, but he couldn't sleep. He had insomnia. So he spent his nights watching RTE. And it's just the one topic after another. I get in trouble if I name all of them, but like, it's just his reasoning, you know, like we're all destroying the earth. The global warming is getting worse and worse. We are the worst thing for it. There's too many people on the planet. It's one thing after another. A lot of people are dying now because, you know, something that happened in 2020, it's having repercussions now on us that we didn't know in 2020. And it's having, you know, causes of sudden death and blood clots and stuff like that. You know, something that happened in 2020. It's just all these arguments that he was giving me, and I was listening to him, and I just felt like he was a respectable guy. This guy was, you know, a nice man. He seemed like a normal guy, but I'm just saying, where are we? You know, like conversations, can we just stop and like maybe question critical thinking? Apparently it's gone out the window as well. So I don't know. I'm just looking at what it's like there in the panorama with what we're dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's to be quite honest, I mean, there are huge issues coming up here because the whole issue of Catholic education is coming up. And I don't think that mainstream Catholic education, with due respect to the fantastic people in it and to all the good work being done in it, at the same time, we've talked about this before, there are huge problems with it. I don't think it's a position to be that independent. It depends massively on the state for financing. And I don't know that the state, again, without reflection on persons, I don't know that the state can now be regarded, at the moment anyway, as a reliable ally for humanity. It just our political leaders lack greatness. They lack gravitas. Many of them, they're too young, and then the ones that are old are too old. They lack that. I mean, where's our Lloyd George, our Churchill, our I know they were flawed characters, our Chamberlain, who's much despised but was a great politician. Where's our FDR? Do you know what I mean? We don't have. I think that the timbre, the quality of leaders that can lead us through this and through the enormous ethical, social, political questions that are arising from it. We just don't have them. I mean, we just have to pray that from somewhere a Teddy Roosevelt emerges, you know, who took on the great trusts.
It's a big step.
In order to defend the market, in order to defend the best of capitalism and the availability of choice, and to make sure the prices weren't being fixed. I mean, will a Roosevelt emerge who can lead the legislation and will have the political will to deal with artificial intelligence and to fight for the core of what is human? And another thing, I mean, obviously we seem to be talking about the importance of private Catholic schools. And I think it may well end up being a hodgepodge network of Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, Muslim schools, not funded by the state, who will just muddle along as best they can, teaching people to be human beings, disciplining the children's use of computers and smartphones, insisting that they do mental arithmetic, insisting that they learn their tables, insisting that they learn to spell properly, and that they learn how to articulate themselves. being independent of the machines. I'm not suggesting a Luddite approach. I'm not suggesting, as I was rather cattily told lately by somebody, when I said Ned Ludd and the thrashing machines, he didn't actually smash up the thrashing machines. I think he smashed a few looms. The smashing of the threshing machines came about 50 years later by other groups. But it was basically a reaction against machinery that was depriving people not only of their living, but of their human standing in society, which was attached to their living. It was depriving people of their status as workers and makers and creators, and the necessity of that to human beings. It's psychological necessity and its spiritual necessity is profound.
Well,
so I'm afraid
there's a context here which is also very strange, because we're in Ireland, and the climate here in this country is optimal. It's the best for these massive data centers that they're building, because it has to be a cool climate, because these machines apparently, and the moisture as well, they require loads and loads of water for the air conditioning, and they need a kind of a cool environment. The tax haven's also very handy. So we're talking about a culture, you're talking like a Teddy Roosevelt or some kind of leader. I've been here only for 5.5 years, Father Brendan, but I'm seeing that if you don't answer to Google and big tech, you're not going anywhere really, as far as that goes in this country, because it's seeming to me that this is the machine. This place it's found its home here. I think it's very interesting that that's happened here in this context. So we're a bunch of like hillbillies here with the pitchforks, and it's against it's like the Matrix, these crazy machines that are there. And I don't know. It's very interesting. I just think it's interesting.
I think we have to learn the technology in order to carve out a niche within the technology in which humanity can continue to exist and live. I think it may be possible to do that. In fact, I'm sure it's possible to do that. It would be difficult legally. It would be difficult because the big corporations will sit on us. It'll be difficult in a whole lot of ways, but not impossible, and not without precedent in human history. I don't think we can wish this away. It's here, but I think we're going to need our virtual pitchforks. Yeah, I think we have to master the technology to stay free of it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying, to use it for what it's for, and obviously it's there. We can't ignore it. I'm encouraged by it. You talk to a lot of young people, and they still have that bite to them, which is very encouraging, because you can kind of you can see how they're sedated. And going back into Huxley as well, I was thinking of an example there when, it's basically just getting them even nourishment. Someone was telling me the day that they were at a very high-end posh restaurant. It was like the thing. It was like really, really you're in with the times. It was a lemon wedge with ants on it. This whole idea of, that's the new thing. Eating the synthetic meat or grasshoppers and ants and stuff, because we're gonna go off the meat. And someone was explaining to me how that's very dangerous to even like a man's his will. Like the diet also affects your capacity, for your will and your strength. You feed them a lot of crap, and you get them to watch a lot of crap, and they just basically give over to you, and you can they're a bit more easy to manage. But it's encouraging to see young lads, they're getting really hooked onto these motivational kind of, people are out there saying, to go on these media fasts and to take over your manhood again. Like I said, well, I wouldn't be, there's nothing Christian in there, but that human, and I think it's an ally of ours as well, because people are kind of they're feeling like, as one boy I was telling me, is like, it is the Matrix. Like, he's like, I got to get out of the Matrix, It all tastes nice and it's all there, but I know it's not real, and he wants to come into the real world. So that's also encouraging. Sadly enough, a lot of them are thinking it's Islam. It's I don't know if you've come across that movement, but young guys kind of seeing Islam as the man religion, because these guys have discipline. They pray. They're not afraid. They stand up for like their faith, and they grow a beard. So I don't know where we got to be in there as well, because you just look at the saints and you look at the Catholic Church. Like that's it is the ideal of the man when you live the faith.
But we're getting what we deserve for centuries of feminizing the church. Whereas if you want to see male piety, and in spite of all that, you could still see male piety right up, I would say, in Ireland. You could see it right into the 1970s and 80s, an authentic male piety, although the people involved were quite old. If you want to see it now, it's in Islam. If you want to see a man at his prayers, the chances are is the best place to see that is in a mosque. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to say that, and that's not no offense to Muslim people. I'm sorry to say it in the sense that it shows how weak the Catholic Church is in this country.
Yeah. You see the men's rosary is starting to pop up, which is nice to see on the first Saturdays of the month. They're trying to get there, the boys. So it is. I think there's something there that is good because we've been challenged. You know, we've seen that it has been effeminized and it has been kind of taken over, and that does hopefully touch a vein there on the hearts of young men to get in there and start being more like Christ and living their faith and not be afraid of it and excusing and apologizing and walking on eggshells. You know, it's like. But well, what would you say? I mean, there's questions here. People are asking here what we think of like the church. You know, like what the role is of the lay people. I think that's also a mistake, is to think that it's going to be more lay-led ministry in the sense that, you know, the priest is going to be taken out of the picture and it's all going to be like a lay-led church. I don't think that's a healthy way to look forward in the future, because there is no church without the Eucharist. And
but sure, the irony is that it's mostly priests who are going on with that, because of course it will absolve the priests from leading a dangerous business, even in peacetime. A very dangerous business in the middle of a cultural war. And secondly, I mean, lay people. What lay people? We're hemorrhaging members. We've plenty of priests for the Catholics we have. I've said this I don't know how many times. We do not have a vocations crisis. And that on my part is the fruit of a lot of thought and a lot of experience and having gone down a lot of blind alleys over the last 20 years. We don't have a vocations crisis, we have a faith crisis. If we had the Catholics, we'd have the priests. How can you produce priests from a position of where there's little or no faith, and what faith there is very weak? The priesthood is a dedication of one's whole life to the service of God. You're deprived of the most basic, one of the most basic human rights, the right to intimacy and to breed. The church is ruthless in that, and it won't be produced. You won't get priests, from a situation in which you have very few believers. You'll get a few priests, and they may indeed, some of them, be exceptional, but you won't get many. If we take our eye off this for a moment, we're in trouble. It is a faith issue, and that's faith with a capital F. But the whole world, the whole developed world, is going through a major faith problem with a small f. Faith in humanity, faith in the world, faith in life as we have always known it, in the restrictions, in the limitations that are on human life. There's a whole crisis there. It is a major crisis. Yeah. Now, this, as I said...
Sorry, keep going. Yeah. Go ahead.
As I said, I don't see anything else worth talking about at the Episcopal Conference. I mean, Episcopal conferences at this stage should be councils of war. You know, and they should have the air almost of a high-powered corporate executive meeting under real pressure, or a council of war. We should be focusing on the essentials and what's staring us in the face constantly. We're not closing down parishes because we don't have priests. We're closing down parishes because we don't have Catholics. If we had Catholics, we'd have priests.
Well said.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just a thick peasant from
No, I think that.
side of a rock and Mayo. Maybe it really is more complicated than this.
No, I
I think
believe
it
it.
should. I think it suits us to take refuge in the brush, in the undergrowth, in all the complications. When in fact the thing is staring us in the face. It's a faith crisis.
100%. No, I totally agree with you, and you can see it. I was going to ask you there, but I don't know if this is a can of worms to open up with 10 minutes left. But you see, I believe at some point as well that we're going to have to be cleansed, chastened. If it could be a chastisement to make us more clean. You get to the point where God's been taken out of the picture, and your heart's been just basically impure to such an extent where He needs that act of mercy where He cleans you. So divine intervention. I always tell people, especially because a lot of times I think the tendency, the temptation would be to say, it's going to hell in a handbasket, the ship's going down, it's over, so I'm just going to figure out dates, like I'm going to dedicate my spiritual life to find out when is this warning going to happen, or when is this, and I always found that that's very unhealthy, dangerous, and it's not from God. Obviously, we're supposed to be on the ground with the family, really pumping our faith out and getting to know Christ every day. But that being said, I don't put it past, as a possibility in our lifetime, seeing an intervention, even if it's on a global scale, even if things have to get worse before they get worse. But I don't know. I just never heard your thoughts of what you thought about that. And it could be putting you on the spot. There's no, it's just you don't have to answer anything, but what your thoughts were on intervention when things get kind of out of the way they are.
Do you mean a vertical intervention, as the theologians say?
Yeah.
You mean an intervention of God, of the deity?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking about essentially, is it a miracle or apocalypse?
I would just think maybe intervention as far as when things get out of control or things get so out of hand that he intervenes. He says, look, up until this point we've gotten, and it's just gotten too much. And there's a divine intervention.
Yeah. I think that's entirely possible, and I would pray for it. I would pray for it. Let the skies rain down righteousness. Yeah, I would pray for it because we're not very good at growing it. So it's an intervention will probably be crucial, or we'll die in our sins.
It's a whole conversation that we would actually get in trouble. We already have 2 strikes on YouTube, and this is one that they really look for to flag. So we won't go too into it, but just the global situation right now, we're on the brink. We've been on the brink for a while now of you could have world war, and it seems like the envelope's getting pushed. And every time there's elections in the States, people kind of find out, through one thing or another, things happen. It's just the way things have been going. It's just getting really intense over there. So the big bad West, it is what it is. I've kind of seen us as, when I kind of zoom out and look at the West, I wouldn't be a big fan of what's going on now. You think of the Africans, the way the Africans are going, a bit more east as well. And then you see us. And a lot of times you can paint the other guys as either the ignorant or even the big bad guys. Whereas you look at yourself and you say, listen, it's going to come to us. Like, we're the ones, first of all, we're going to become extinct because we're not having kids. And second of all, the stuff we're pumping out as ideologies and the way we're trying to get people to live, it's getting messy. So like a war could be there as well. That could be a cleansing, and that could be kind of a start of something. But I don't know. We're in very, very interesting times to be Catholics. It's not to terrify people. We're not going into hiding. I think what you're saying there is the Lone Ranger, Billy the Kid. I always liked Billy the Kid for some reason. I kind of could see him as...
There we go.
Going in, yeah. And in the context of the country we're in, I think we need to be excited that we're in these times where, humanly speaking, it's absolutely impossible, especially in the way we're living.
Yeah.
This referendum that's coming up in March as well. We're talking about that next Monday, just to kind of get people kind of a bit on board.
Yeah, I've just done a video on it as well that's ready to go. Yeah.
Did you? Oh, good man.
Yeah. I think it's fundamentally, well, I suppose it was inevitable, but it's being rushed, and it's fundamentally anti-family.
Yeah, and I think what I was told is that it's so hush hush. There's not been, even for the Yes campaign, there hasn't been anything really moving. They don't want
Yeah.
people to even wake up about it and go out there. They said with the NGOs that they have and the support, they can get this thing through just like that without even campaigning. So we'll do our piece. We'll do our best. We'll get people there, because someone told me it's just a sign that you've lost philosophy and you've lost reasoning when you can go after principles, foundational things, and not blink an eye. You're taking away a principle, like a foundation, and you're not thinking twice about it, of like consequences of what's going to happen when you take that out. And there's loads of other things. So good, man. I'm actually interested to see what you have to say on that, because maybe it can inspire me as well for next Monday. We're going to be interviewing Tracy Mahoney.
Without an intervention, like at the very least with the invisible work of grace, but perhaps something much more robust, we may not make it, And I think probably divine interventions are more common than we think. If you consider the danger the world has been in since the Second World War.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. But we pray for that and stock up on dog food. Yeah. Yeah. And you need to learn to open the tin like Mel. Okay?
I have to see it first.
Yeah. Do see that. Yeah.
Well, good, man, Father Brendan. Look, we appreciate that as always, and the humor's also, we can never lose that. The humor is so important. And if you noticed,